guys. That's a good fish. Yes, yes, baby. Look at that. That worked just like it should. What's happening, guys, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Jeremy with Fishing the Lone Star. And before we begin, I need to let you know that this video is sponsored by MonsterBass, the subscription box service that we all love because it's the better box. Or at least you should love it. I know I do. So let's dive in. Today we're talking shaky heads. Now, why, you say, are we talking shaky heads? Well, because as you saw in the clip that began this video, caught some pretty good fish on shaky heads lately, both in the month of August and September. But as we're getting into that fall transition in September, moving into October, there's still a place for shaky heads. So we're going to talk about what that is. We're going to talk about why. We're going to talk about all the different types of worms, or finesse worms, or shaky head worms, or magnum shaky head worms that you have to choose from. So let's dive in. All right, now as you can see in front of me, we have all kinds of shaky head worms. And we got all of these different packs. If you think this is bad, you should see what the compartments of my boat look like. Tons and tons of options. I want to highlight a couple today, and what's really cool about this video is the clip you saw at the very beginning of me catching that bass. That was actually filmed the day before my MonsterBass box arrived for September, and lo and behold, wouldn't you know what came in September's box? A shaky head worm, which tells you that the baits that come in a Regional Pro box are pretty darn spot on for what's going to help you catch fish at that particular time of year. That's the whole point of the subscription box service that MonsterBass offers. That's the whole point of it being a Regional Pro box, is you're getting baits for your region that work for your time of year in your region. All right, so let's dive into some of these particular worms, what makes them all different and unique, and how you can use them. This is just 6 particular worms that I have on my boat that I'll pick and choose from. So you've got kind of a magnum finesse worm, that's by Zoom. We've got, what was this one called by Z-Man? I forget. Oh, the fatties with a Z by Z-Man. We have, this is the 13 Fishing, the blunt force finesse worm that just came in this one's box. So we'll talk about this one and how ribbed that is and why that's important. You've seen me throw this before, the Deception Worm by X-Zone Lures. You have a Magnum Zoom Worm. And then you also have the Magnum Crawler by Smash Tech. And just in comparison between even the two Magnum baits, that's about a whole nother inch, 8.5 inches, 7.5 inches, I believe, between these two. So let's talk about why you're going to use some of these, how you're going to rig them. The jig heads, you know, there's all different kinds of jig heads for a shaky head worm. I actually don't have, if you have kind of your Magnum worms here, your larger ones, I don't have it on me, but I know Strike King makes a pretty big jig head. There's others you can find, but I would recommend kind of a 1/2 ounce to maybe even a little bit larger, like a 5/8. With as big of a hook as you can get for your Magnum worms. Just because you're fishing these deep, you want it to get down there quickly and stay down deep, so a heavier weight is going to work on those. And then for all of your other ones, even a kind of a Magnum Finesse by Zoom or your other worms, you can use kind of your standard ball head type shaky head jig. So I'll show you kind of what those look like. These are both the screw lock. But then Z-Man also makes one that looks like this without the screw lock. And the reason why that's important is because Z-Man, like the fatties, if you want to throw this as like a shaky head, you're not going to be able to screw a screw lock into Elastec plastic very well. Instead, you're going to use this particular type, which you're just going to hook a little bit, almost like if you were Texas rigging this worm, kind of out to there, push it down. You're just going to push the plastic right over that part. Again, it's Elastec, so it's kind of tough. Pull it over nice and snug so it just sits on there. And then you're just gonna figure out, kind of, here, I'll do it on your side. You're gonna figure out where your worm's gonna go in, put your thumb there, pull back, push in. And then very similar style with a screw lock. You're just gonna screw the plastic right in there. Here's one that's kind of already done. So you're gonna screw that screw lock right into your plastic in the nose, and then do the same thing in terms of burying your hook into the meat of the worm. You'll notice that both of these jigs have a flat side. So there's a flat side here and a flat side there. That is so that when they hit the bottom, they can stand up like so. So that worm, once it hits the bottom, I'll kind of do it here, is gonna hit the bottom and stand up. And then once you give it a shake of your rod tip, that's gonna kind of do this and undulate in the water. That weight's gonna pop up. That's why it's called a shaky head, because you're shaking the head. And when you shake that, you'll notice these worms have a lot of movement in the tail. Watch this one from 13 Fishing. I'm just gonna pick it up and look at the movement. And you can see I'm holding my hand as straight as I can. I'll even stop it just to make sure it's super straight. Okay. And then just with the slightest little tip or wiggle in my fingertips, look how that worm's moving. That's kind of the whole point of the shaky head. So as you're just barely shaking the rod tip, you're getting a lot of movement out of that worm. Where I like to throw the shaky head, you'll notice that very first clip I was throwing actually this big Magnum finesse worm. I was throwing it around a lot of timber. So you're gonna wanna throw it around submerged timber, trees, laydowns is where probably the shaky head excels, very much like a Texas rig worm, except this is when you need it to sit even more stiller, calmer, quieter, almost dead sticking it on either a really high, bright, sunny day or just in a day when bass just aren't chasing and moving or chasing a lot of moving baits. This is when you're almost gonna wanna dead stick a finesse worm on a shaky head. I'm gonna show you real quick the rods that I'm using, just so you can kind of get a feel for exactly kind of my thought process when I'm choosing a particular rod, reel, line size, etc. I'll start with the one I'm probably using the most, and this is a 7.3 medium heavy by TFO. Now this particular rod is medium heavy through the majority of the rod, but it has a good tip on it. And what I mean by that is it's a real soft tip. It's a very sensitive rod. So when I'm throwing that shaky head, you can actually, it's what I still have tied on from my last trip out. When I'm throwing that shaky head, I can feel every little tick or every little bite because this rod is super sensitive. Now on this particular one, my smaller worms, I'm throwing 14-pound fluorocarbon, a 1/4 ounce weight. I would recommend 3/16, 1/4 for your smaller weights because you're still technically, probably throwing these in 5-6 foot of water. So you still want it to get down and stay down. The reel speed really doesn't matter because you're barely moving this bait. And when you move the bait, you're gonna move it with the rod tip. So you're gonna lift the rod tip up. And then as you reel in your slack, you're gonna point the rod back down and reel in your slack. And then drag the rod tip back up again because you're dragging the bait. Let it sit, point the rod back down, reel in your slack. Now, the rod I was using in that video, just because it's again a much bigger worm, I'll kind of show you the size differences between these two. All right, so when I'm throwing this one, I'm throwing it on probably a 1/4 ounce to 3/16 ounce, maybe 1/8 if you're in a pond. Whereas with these bigger worms, I'm throwing a 1/2 ounce, if even a 5/8 ounce. Now, on that one, I'm throwing this is a 7.6 rod, still in the TFO lineup. It's super sensitive, which is what I love about these Tactical Elite rods. So I can still throw a 7.6 extra heavy, but it's because I'm throwing such a heavier weight, that 5/8 ounce or over a 1/2 ounce. I want a rod that I know I can really jack the fish with. You saw the hook set in that video, and I know I can get them out of trees and timber, which again is what I'm fishing. I am throwing this one on 20-pound fluorocarbon just because it is a heavier weight, heavier bait, and around a lot of heavy timber. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's a quick rundown. I know you've got a ton of different options. This is a really cool bait that came in this month's Monster Bass box, and such a perfect time of year to throw it as well. The Regional Pro box, I'm telling you guys, make sure you're subscribed to the Better Box because you're getting baits that work for your region and your time of year. Make sure you go follow Monster Bass. I've got a couple of videos that I posted over on their channel as well. So go find me on the Monster Bass channel. Make sure you subscribe there. Subscribe here as well. Hey, and if nobody told you today, God loves you, and so do I. Peace out.